Hey everyone, so this video I'm covering the topic of like exercises you shouldn't do, or exercises your fitness expert or fitness trainer, PT, whatever you call it, has told you not to do, or what you've seen on Instagram saying yes or no, do this, do that. I'm sure we've all heard it before, especially when it comes to the shoulder joint itself. Usually a big one people talk about is don't do upright rows. And I'm just going to do my opinion. Just excuse my cat jumping around, wanting to be in the video. Anyway, like I was saying, just discussing like exercises that people tell you shouldn't do. And they're right, but also there's also more to the picture of why you shouldn't do it. And more to the picture that actually you can do it, but there's just little elements you need to change about it. So I've worded it in the way of like what exercises are higher in injuries, because I'll be honest, my take on it, at the end of this video you'll see that I recommend you can do these exercises, but there's little things to consider. So what exercises are higher in injuries? So we always come across like someone is injury prone to the gym. Sometimes that can relate to the style of training they're doing, and also like if they're periodizing right or wrong. There's lots of different elements to it, but there's always those main exercises that get targeted for causing injuries. And here's a list of mine. So skull crusher, so that's where you're lying down on a bench, you got your arms extended and you're working the elbow joint, so you're working the triceps. Your dips, this is where your shoulders are pushed back a little bit and you're dipping, you're going through that dipping motion. You're usually doing it assisted or without assistance. You're relying on your body weight to dip and work your triceps. Upright row, you're either holding dumbbells, barbell, kettlebell, and you're bringing it up, working the shoulder joint specifically. Inverted leg press, that is where you're lying completely flat on the ground. You might see people do this on the Smith machine. It's one that actually I would say totally don't do. You're lying completely flat on your back and you got your feet up on the bar of the Smith machine and you're pushing upward. People treat that like a leg press. A deadlift, one of my favorites. Of course, I preach on about it, but as you'll see with everything, form is the big thing. Bench press. So just like the push-up, extending, like working that shoulder back and then pushing inward, pulling in from the chest. So what these have in common is what's going to make it easier to understand why they get associated with high risk and high injury, and why people swear against them or swear for them. So a lot of these ones, the skull crusher, the dips, the upright row, the bench press, all relate to the shoulder girdle. And when they relate to the shoulder girdle, it's because they're usually at a weaker point. So like for the upright row, if you're quite in, you're putting a lot of pressure in that joint. And if you're at a bench press, coming back and like opening up that chest, again, compromising position. And let's say you're going heavy, it's gonna take a hell of a lot of strain, because right now it's become less chest right here and more joint pain. So that's where it becomes out of the joint and into the actual muscles itself, because you're working the chest and the triceps. Skull crushers, direct pressure onto the elbow. So again, you're getting to that point where pressure on the elbow, on the joint, and then muscular. So you got those points where it's quite severe. And one of the worst ones when it comes to form, dipping and your shoulders internally rotate. And also like your back starts to round. Again, direct pressure on your shoulder and also on your elbow as well. So big things for these, for the shoulder girdle one, is making sure that you're training in the right position. It's all good in order to do dips, do bench presses, upright rows, but if you actually got shoulder stability to hold a strong posture, for one, being able to bench press and get it to here and push off without having to rotate your shoulder back or anything, you're going to be a lot safer. Getting into a dip, of course, naturally, path of least resistance, you're going to want to rotate over around your back and you're going to be dipping. You will feel your triceps working, but there's lots of pressure points on your elbows, on your shoulders. I've felt it before in the past. And you got the leg movement, so the hip movement. So the deadlift, when you're hinging over at the hips, you're creating quite a severe point. So when you start to lack form or start to go heavy, that's where the point of like pressure becomes your back, and that's where a lot of back injuries get associated with this. And even with the inverted leg press, you're putting so much direct pressure onto your vertebrae and onto your lower spine when you're low down on the actual mat or what have you, and you're pressing upward with that inverted leg press. That's direct pressure right down to the spine. You're better off doing squats or deadlifts. If that's the case, it's a highly dangerous move. Like I said, I probably would scratch this off. You'll see it on Instagram. Don't ever do it. They're probably the only one I'd ever say don't ever do. But back onto track on what this is about. What exercises are higher in injuries? So, I've already gone over what's common, what's making them common when it comes to injuries, and a big thing for that is the intensity. So usually when people are injuring themselves in these movements here, it's because I've amped the intensity up, and as you know, with most goals, it's all about progressing the weight and getting that development going, and over time, when you're getting that strength and getting that development going, you're going to want to go heavier. And as you go heavier, these joints more strained on. So doing a skull crusher, like for myself, if I'm skull crushing like 10 kilos, that will feel pretty easy for me, and I'm feeling my triceps working. And then I start to get really confident over the months, and I start to go 20, 30, and then I'm really pushing it to go 40. I've stopped going tricep and going more direct pressure to my joints. So it'll be my elbow, my shoulder, and my wrist start to feel it. So it stops becoming an efficient exercise for the muscle itself and more damaging to the joints. So this is where people kind of push it too far and have direct pressure on the joints, and when you have that, that's when you start to get muscular injuries and joint injuries. So let's take out of this. Yes, you can do these exercises. I just don't want to see you do the inverted leg press. You can do the exercises, just when you're doing these specific exercises in the compromising position that they're going to be worked at. You got to remember, if you want muscular efficiency, you don't need to go heavy all the time. And of course, with the deadlifts, with the bench press, you want ultimate form when it comes to going 90 to 100%. With these other exercises, these secondary exercises that aren't so much compound, you don't need to go 90 to 100. You keep that about 80. You don't need to go like 100% intensity when it comes to your skull crushers or your dips. You don't need to add more weight to it, because when you start to feel that direct pressure on your joints opposed to feeling efficient muscular contraction on your triceps, then you are just training for injury. So this is where people are right in saying that these exercises are horrible, but also at the same time, it's up to the individual to moderate the intensity to get it right, so you're not applying direct pressure. So yeah, that's my take on the exercises that are common for injuries. These are the ones that usually people do, and later in life they say, hey, I really regret doing skull crushes or upright rows. And yes, you can do them, but you got to moderate that intensity right, so you're getting muscular contraction and you're not applying direct pressure on the joint, and you should have longevity for your exercise, and you won't become one of those statistics of like, I just injured myself doing this. So a lot of this is dictated by the intensity you have and the form you take into the exercise. But hopefully that was helpful. But yeah,